It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
This episode of The Price of Football is supported by International Sports Convention 2025, which is taking place on March the 19th and 20th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. More than 1,000 delegates and 100 speakers will be attending the event, and they will be covering a huge range of topics, from sponsorship and fan engagement to governance and integrity. Founded in 2009, International Sports Convention is the meeting place for the business of sport and has been for the last 16 years.
And there's a special treat for those lucky enough to attend the 2025 edition. The two of us will also be appearing. We'll be having a chat about football finance and governance in front of a live audience. You can book your place now at a special early offer price by going to internationalsportsconvention.com. But don't delay, that special early offer price is only available until the 20th of February.
Book your place now for International Sports Convention 2025 at Spurs Stadium on the 19th and 20th of March by going to internationalsportsconvention.com, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Do you know what, Kieran? I've seen more of your flat than you have. It seems to me in the last couple of days we've spent a lot of time on this chat platform. Makes it sound a bit seedy, doesn't it?
Yes.
Guy doesn't like us mentioning what platform we're recording on, but I've seen a lot of it, and we're back again, Kieran, with another interview. And if you're a Price of Football Club member, the second interview in a week. Because earlier we spoke to Paul Barber, the CEO of Brighton, was it, Kieran? I believe is that right?
I believe so, yes. I think I've heard of him.
Paul Barber, CEO of Brighton, and Claire Sumner, who's Chief Policy and Social Impact Officer of the Premier League. And they wanted to rehearse some of their worries and fears about the appointment of an independent regulator, and a robust conversation and a genial time was had by all. And as a counterpoint to that, we have just interviewed Lisa Nandy, who is the Minister for Culture, Media and Sport. We chatted to her about the regulator. We put some of the concerns of Paul Barber and Claire Sumner to her, and this is what Lisa had to say. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We've had a few technical issues, plus a dog barking somewhere. We've not been able to identify where the dog is, but we're used to that on this pod. Can I ask you, Lisa, before we talk through some of the specific criticisms, and may I say wrong criticisms, of the regulator bill, what's been the process behind taking over a bill introduced by another government? Did you spend time talking to Tracy Crouch, for example?
Oh, definitely. I'm still trying to get over that dog. I'm trying to work out where it was. Yeah, we did. So I actually first started talking to Tracy about this years ago, before she started the fan-led review, because my own club, Wigan Athletic, had been treated disgracefully by its previous owners. We'd ended up in administration, and we were fortunate enough to come through that process, but then found ourselves in a similar position a few years later. And so Tracy and I have spoken about this a lot, but obviously she did the fan-led review of football. She consulted lots of fans and the opposition, which we then were at the time, and we thought it was a really sensible thing that she was doing, really gripping these issues and fulfilling the promises that we'd made to fans for a long time. So when it came to the election last year, we had a commitment to continue with this bill in our manifesto. We've toughened it up a little bit. We've made it actually much closer to what Tracy and the fans had originally proposed, with more powers for fans, because the sole intention really is to put fans back at the heart of the game where they belong. Actually, it was in the Conservative Party's manifesto at the last election as well. So until this week, we did have a cross-party agreement that it was time to put fans first in football. Sadly, that appears to have somewhat collapsed this week, but we've picked up from where they left off. We've built on the work that they did, and we're really confident that it's the right thing, and we're determined to get on with it without any more delay.
Yeah, we'll come on to this week's developments, shall we say, in a moment. But have you been surprised at the amount of interest that the not normally interested in football House of Lords has been taking, or is that just part of the usual scrutiny process that you would expect?
We do have a lot of football fans in the House of Lords. Well, football fans, we get everywhere, don't we? So, of course, there are going to be lots of football fans in the Lords. I think what's happened with this bill is fairly unusual. There are lots of peers who've got a genuine interest, who have been flagging pragmatic concerns with us about the way the bill is drafted. We've been working very closely with them to make sure we don't end up with any unintended consequences, and we protect the whole football ecosystem. There are, though, I'm afraid, a handful of unelected peers who have been clearly trying to wreck the bill. I think Kemi Badenoch added her voice to them this week. They were trying to turn it into what's called a hybrid bill, which is when you basically bury the bill in committee for years and years and years. Astonishingly, they said there hadn't been enough debate or consultation, completely ignoring the fact that the last government did a huge amount of consultation with the people who most matter, the fans. And there's been an ongoing dialogue from the previous government and now this government with every part of the football ecosystem. We're working with the former group of peers to improve the bill is an absolutely legitimate and essential part of the process. But trying to wreck a bill that is a commitment that we made to fans and a commitment that the last government made to fans is an absolute disgrace, and we're not going to stand for it.
As you mentioned, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, just 2 days ago says she no longer backs this, and I quote, bonkers piece of legislation, and claims she always thought it would be a waste of money. What were your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure she even understands what it is. I mean, quite apart from the fact that not very long ago she was writing to her own constituents to say she wholeheartedly supported it, I just don't understand why she thinks it would be a waste of government money, because the regulator will be funded by football itself. It'll be a small levy compared to the size of the revenue that football produces, 6 billion annual revenue. It'll be proportionate, so clubs won't be asked to pay more than they can afford. So I think she's just shown that she doesn't really understand what this is. I think she's just seen the word regulator and decided to take aim at it. But what she's actually done is take aim at football fans across the whole of this country. It's not a smart move, and it's not a good move either.
Speaking of money, Lisa, there's no doubt that the cost of the regulator has been an issue, certainly for clubs outside the Premier League. Like Mark Ives, head of the National League, spoke to us at some length about his concerns over who would be paying for the regulator. So can you clarify for us just how much it will cost and who will be covering that cost?
So the last government did an estimate, which was relatively light touch and small, but we can't give a precise figure at the moment. And the reason that we can't is because the bill is still going through Parliament. So we've been working with, like I said, there are a number of peers I was speaking to Karen Brady from West Ham, for example, this week about some sensible amendments that she is trying to make to the bill to make sure that we don't deter owners from coming forwards. Now, we think they're very sensible, and we're working with her and the bill team to make sure that we amend the bill so that we get it into the right shape. But until we know the overall shape of the regulator, we know exactly what comes out the other side of the parliamentary process. It's difficult to put a precise figure on. What I can say is that football has an annual revenue of £6 billion, and we're anticipating that it'll obviously be a tiny fraction of that cost, given that the whole point of this regulator is that it's not heavy-handed, it's not interventionist. The system incentivises football to come to its own agreement, which is our preference and football's. But if it can't, as we've seen in recent years, there has to be a protection for fans.
Well, the Premier League are currently spending around £50 million a year of legal fees, so they could afford their share of the cost of a regulator. And also, interestingly, some of the people who have been complaining about how much it will cost are also saying that you're not offering a big enough salary to attract the sort of level of competence that this job needs.
Yeah, I thought that was quite a strange argument, actually. I mean, we've had no shortage of people who want to do the regulator job, as you would imagine. We appoint the chair, and then the chair will obviously have a significant role in appointing the chief executive. But a salary of £130,000, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I don't know many people who earn that. And it's something that you do because you care very much about football and want it to succeed. That's an absolute must for interested applicants, and I don't think there are any shortage of people in this country who A, want to do that, and B, have the skills to bring to bear to help us achieve it.
Before I run you through some specific criticisms and valid points, I have to say, it does seem to me that a lot of the opposition, certainly from club owners and the Premier League, and their tame journalists, is what I would call conditional. There's a lot of whataboutery going on. There's a lot of, well, what if the regulator does this, and what if they change their mind? And when you say to them, well, there's nothing in the bill that indicates that's going to happen, they will mutter that phrase that you used, unintended consequences. Mm-hmm. Is that vagueness of opposition something that you found frustrating?
I think what's most frustrating is the lack of acknowledgement that there's a problem. You know, I'm the MP for Wigan, and my town has been through the ringer twice in recent years, but we, in some ways, are the lucky ones. My stepdad was a lifelong season ticket holder at Gig Lane, and when Bury FC collapsed, the impact on fans who, you know, had passed this club down as part of their civic inheritance through generations of families who, you know, it stood at the centre of the town, been part of the social fabric, but also a huge part of the local economy. To see that collapse and to see what it did to the town and to the fans, we've got far too many clubs in a really precarious position across this country. I was talking to the Reading MP only a few days ago, and Morecambe's MP recently. We've got to grip this and put fans back at the heart of the game. They are the reason that this game thrives and does so well. And they are the people who step in and fight for their clubs when they're in trouble. They're the people who turn up week after week, in rain or shine, good times and bad. And I just can't really understand the idea that there's no problem to be solved. I've heard that too many times. And I think no football fan in the country would recognise that picture.
Well, I was going to ask you this later, but I'll ask you specifically now you've mentioned it, because we spoke to Paul Barber, the CEO of Brighton.
Yeah.
It's always good for a Palace fan to hear how well run another club is. And Claire Sumner, who's the Chief Policy Officer at the Premier League, 2 days ago. An interview I would describe as mainly cordial. But they had several concerns that they asked that we would raise with you. And one of them was that one in particular, the fact that, this is a quote, that clubs are very well run at the moment. And there have been remarkably few liquidations in recent years, to which I think Man United fans would say, are they very well run? And to which Bury fans would say, well, one liquidation is too many. So it doesn't seem to outsiders, it doesn't seem to football fans that a lot of football clubs are running themselves well. And to be honest, our podcast wouldn't need to exist if football clubs were running themselves financially. And we actually long for the day when this podcast doesn't have to exist.
Well,
because there will be sensible club owners all over the country.
I was going to say, after having a politician on, your listeners might be longing for the day when this podcast doesn't exist. But I mean, all the bill does is require clubs to have a business plan, to consult their fans, and for there to be good ownership. And it seems to me that that's not a big ask. Many clubs are already doing that. They're doing it perfectly well. The problem is the ones that aren't. There are 60 clubs that have gone into insolvency since the Premier League was formed in 1992. And behind that statistic are so many other near misses, like mine at Wigan Athletic. When we launched the bill, I sat down with some of the fans groups in the Football Museum in Manchester, and Gary Neville came along. We had a good chat about some of the problems that have led to the bill being necessary. And I'll never forget one of the fans saying to me that she just lived with this for years, this feeling that you're only one bad owner away from losing something that mattered so much. And that sentiment has really stayed with me, because that is exactly how we feel at Wigan Athletic. We've got a great owner now, but we thought we had a great owner before. And then, we've got passed around from pillar to post, ended up in administration. We were bought by somebody who was a very good owner until he wasn't. And the protections just weren't there. What I learned through that horrendous experience of fighting day and night to save the club is that at best, the systems that were supposed to protect us failed, and at worst, they treated fans like a nuisance to be shut out of the conversation. And that, I was really affronted by that. I've been in politics for a long time, and I've seen people treated very badly in every walk of life. But for football, which is the people's game, to have systems that treat fans like that, it just, no government should stand for that. But particularly a Labour government, we just can't stand for it.
Do you know, I actually wish I hadn't met Gary Neville, because I was quite happy not liking him until I actually met him and decided that he had quite a lot of sensible things to say about football. You may also be wondering, Lisa, why Kieran is sort of looking on like an urchin through a window. Kieran's normally included in the interview, but I know we have time constraints today, so we'll be talking about some of the stuff, Kieran and I together, about some of the things you're saying. Because if I bring him in now, he won't stop talking. That's the problem.
I thought it was just because his dog wouldn't stop barking.
And another of the issues, and again, I'm quoting here, is when we talked to Paul and Louise about the fact that they've had 3 years, the Premier League in particular, have had 3 years to sort out the redistribution of money with the EFL. And the EFL, when we've spoken to Trevor Birch, he's told us their attitude pretty much seems to be, well, what are the EFL negotiating with? We'll decide when we distribute the money and how much you're going to get. But Paul Barber from Brighton said a backstop is actually a disincentive to negotiating a fairer deal for distributing money through the pyramid. I'm not entirely sure what the phrase backstop means here, so perhaps you can elaborate. But it seems to me that one thing that the regulator won't be is a disincentive to discussions about a fairer distribution of money.
No, I mean, if football had been able to come to its own agreement, I'm not sure we'd be here. The problem is that it hasn't, and this has been going on for years and left people in limbo. I think Paul's argument, I've heard other people make this, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think the argument is that because both the EFL and the Premier League know that there's going to be a regulator, that it disincentivises people to come to the table and reach an agreement. But that really is a misunderstanding of what the bill does, because the regulator only intervenes if the leagues can't agree. One of the leagues has to trigger that backstop. The regulator will then look at that and think, is that reasonable? Is it in the interests of football and of fans to intervene? And if it is, the regulator will then ask both parties to put their offers on the table and choose the one that is most reasonable. So it's the most light touch system that you can possibly imagine. It incentivises both sides to be reasonable, because if they put a really unreasonable offer on the table, it won't be chosen. So it incentivises them to come together and meet in the middle. And I'd be delighted if the EFL and the Premier League wanted to come together and agree. I said to both of them that I've spent far too much time over the last 7 months sitting in rooms talking to one set of clubs and another set of clubs. And it is like being on a different planet, just having a completely different conversation. I want them in the same room and I want them to reach an agreement. And I think all football fans want that as well. The other thing I would just say too is that we're talking about the Premier League and the EFL as if they're one entity, but actually, Claire and I sat down with Premier League clubs a couple of weeks ago in Manchester. And I think it's fair to say, I think she would agree, that there is a wide spectrum of opinion, even within the Premier League itself, from clubs who are very, very supportive of the bill and want it to be passed without delay, to clubs who are deeply opposed in principle. And in the middle is a huge set of clubs who are very pragmatic, who support a lot of the proposals in the bill, but have some concerns about the way that it's currently drafted. And it's an open door. We're not going to delay the bill. Football fans have waited for too long, but we've got several weeks left in the House of Lords, and then it goes into the House of Commons. And they've got me on speed dial, both me and the Minister, Steph Peacock. We want to work with them and get it right because we recognise that football is an ecosystem. What we won't do, though, is stand by and watch as fans lose their clubs over and over again when we could prevent that.
Wow.
What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
Huddle up. It's me, Angel Reese. You can't beat the post-game burger and fries, right? Know what else you can't beat? The Angel Reese Special. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. It's gonna be a high C for me. Sound good? All you have to do to get it is beat me in a one-on-one. I'm just playing. Get the Angel Reese Special at McDonald's now. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
Can I just clarify something you said there, Lisa? Because I think it's a point that Claire Rose, she used the phrase binary about the backstop. So you can confirm that if both sides were to put an argument to you, the regulator would choose one or the other rather than encourage them to go back and renegotiate. They would say, this is the one that we're going for.
Well, the regulator definitely has a role in talking to the leagues and trying to get them to reach an agreement. That's absolutely right. And if they can, that's much, much better. The whole regulator model has been set up in a very, very different way to most clunky regulation that we have in this country. In fact, as a government, we see this as the model of how you should do regulation because it's so light touch. It incentivises them to come to an agreement. At any point during that process, they can do that. And actually, the regulator could choose one or the other, and then they could decide between themselves to reach a new agreement. I mean, it doesn't preclude football from doing any of the things that it's currently able to do now, but it means that we won't have this stasis again, where both sides are miles apart and nobody can get them to sit in a room and agree.
Another criticism we heard a lot during the interview the other day is that the regulator will, and again I'm quoting here, inevitably be too risk averse and will prevent incoming investment to the game. We saw Brentford CEO last week write an article saying the regulator will stop clubs dreaming, will stop clubs having ambition.
I don't really understand the argument about the regulator being too risk averse. I have discussed this with some of the people who've argued this, but the point of the regulator is that they are enabling good ownership. So 3 tests in the bill. Are you consulting with your fans? Do you have a decent business plan? Is the money there? Does the financial sustainability add up? And do you have a decent owner? And when I say decent owner, the fitness test will look at integrity, honesty, financial soundness and competence. I mean, just seems to me that they're very basic things that you would expect a football club to want as not just as a business, but because football clubs are far more than businesses. They're social assets, they're community assets. They belong to us, and owners are custodians of them, who then have a duty to hand them on to the next in as good or a better state as they found them. And when I talk to my owner, Mike Danson, that's exactly how he sees it. It's how Dave Whelan treated Wigan Athletic for years and years. But every club deserves an owner as good as that, and that's what the purpose of the bill is. It just seems to me it's a very strange argument to say we don't want somebody who's going to be the ultimate safeguard for fans.
I've never met a man more proud of his pies than Dave Whelan. He's very proud of his pies. He mentioned a couple of times.
He's from Wigan. Everyone in Wigan's proud of pies.
I will bring Kieran in very briefly here, Lisa, if you don't mind, just on this idea of the regulator preventing incoming investment, because Kieran's fairly sure that it's profit and sustainability rules that are more likely to put investors off than the regulator, Kieran, aren't you?
Well, yes, if we take a look at what's happened over the last 12 to 18 months, Jim Ratcliffe's come in to buy a minority stake at Manchester United. We've got new owners at Everton. We've got significant investment has come into Aston Villa, where the two initial owners have now taken on a third party. And I can assure you, if you drop down into the EFL clubs, there's been a substantial number of deals, and there is a substantial number of potential deals taking place at this moment in time. If prospective owners had genuine reservations that the uncertainty created by the bill or the legislation was going to stop, they simply wouldn't come to the table. They wouldn't invest. But they've done all of these things in the knowledge that the recommendations of the fan-led review for a regulator, we've had one set of draft legislation and we've had a second set, it's not stopping the deals going through. So the bankers, the lawyers, the accountants, they're all still busy drafting terms as we speak.
Lisa, there are two more main criticisms, if you don't mind. I think it's only fair to air with you because they seem they're obviously genuinely held beliefs. The first, this is one I struggle to understand. So I'm lucky Kieran was there the other day because he's the grown-up in the room. The idea that the review of regulatory powers will lead to a cycle of doom, which sounds like a Doctor Who episode, but this is assumption that the sort of regular appraisal of the regulator's powers will be a disaster of football because it will just reset everything every 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I think this refers to the fact that the leagues won't be able to trigger the backstop within 5 years of coming to an agreement, and that's why it's such a curious criticism, because that's the point of having that 5-year period, is to make sure that you don't just get an endless round of leagues trying to tear up deals and negotiate new ones. So 5 years is the minimum period that the deal has to last. But it's then up to the leagues. If they want a new deal, they have to approach each other, have a conversation. If they can't reach an agreement on that, one of the leagues can ask the regulator to get involved, and that's entirely up to football itself. The way that this has been set up is so that football comes to its own agreement. It's only when it can't that it doesn't. It just seems to me a very odd idea that you would be upset about the fact that we give 5 years certainty, you reach a deal, you stick to it, and you stick to it for that period. And then once you've had a 5-year period, things may have shifted very significantly in the footballing world. If I look at the last 5 years, things have changed quite significantly. If you look at the last 20 years, things have changed very significantly. So it empowers football to be able to renegotiate those deals if they want. I don't think that's a cycle of doom. I think that's a helpful way of ensuring the sustainability of the whole ecosystem.
And this last criticism is one that I've discussed with various club owners and CEOs of, let's call them mid-table Premier League clubs, when I've suggested to them that surely the regulator is good for teams like Brentford, Palace, Bournemouth, because it's going to prevent a Super League. It's going to prevent any chance that the so-called Super Six will negotiate their own broadcasting deals somewhere down the line, in which clubs like Brentford and Palace don't get as much because we don't drive the global interest. But the argument you already get back for them is that the 14 majority rule in the Premier League puts an end to all of that. The Premier League are more than capable of looking after their own interests, because that 14 majority rule means that the Super League will never come in. It means that the Super Six will never be able to set their own broadcast deal. And that, to me, seems... if I was the owner of Crystal Palace, for example, well, I'd change the kit back, but if I was the owner of Crystal Palace, I think I'd be happy for a regulator to prevent something, because we're minnows in a shark-infested pool, as far as I could see.
Well, I mean, I think that's an argument that suggests that the regulator doesn't go far enough, actually, because the job of the regulator isn't to intervene in all aspects of football. It's simply to make sure that clubs have a good owner, a business plan, and consult their fans. And I think that's right. I think it's right for football to look after itself and set its own rules and determine how it works, but with a backstop for fans, which is what's been missing for a really long time. And I think, somebody in the Premier League made the point to me not that long ago that actually, this point about being able to have clubs that come up and down and move between leagues and having the health of those EFL clubs that are able then to, like Wigan Athletic, who we went up, then went down, then we collapsed. I mean, it was quite a dramatic set of years for us, but it's that jeopardy is what gives so many fans the enjoyment. So if you're a club at the top of the Premier League, it's as important to you that clubs at the bottom of the Premier League and in the Championship are able to be sustainable, are able to move up and down, because otherwise you don't have that element of jeopardy. And what's the game unless that exists? So I think this is good for the whole of football. And I'm really encouraged by the fact that wherever we go in the country, fans say that to us as well. From the bigger clubs to the smaller clubs, I think everybody recognises that action is long overdue and that fans are what make the game what it is. They've been ignored and overlooked for far too long, and we've got to put them back at the centre of the game.
I have to say, Lisa, I know we have to draw to a close. To the credit of a lot of the people in football that I disagree with about the regulator, most of whom are able to articulate their arguments better and marshal their facts better than I do, as I get all emotional because I'm a football fan. I haven't met anybody who's against the regulator, who's against the heritage part of it, the protecting the heritage, the protecting badges, the protecting club nicknames. Everybody seems to be in favour of that aspect, which is one thing for you to grasp, I imagine, when you're going through some of those sleepless nights.
I think it's true. I think that's absolutely true. But what I would just say to those people who support those aspects of it, but not the other, is it's absolutely essential that fans get the right to be heard on things like team colours and the look and feel of the club and the heritage items, which, in the end belong to them. But that's no use without a club. And the experience that they had at Bury, the experience that we had at Wigan Athletic, wasn't about whether we could keep our heritage items. It was whether we were going to be able to keep anything at all. Because when we went into administration, the administrators came in and essentially asset stripped the place. I mean, they even sold the washing machines. So I don't want another fan to wake up thinking like that fan from Sheffield United, we're only one bad owner away from losing the lot. And it's the lot that matters to me, and I think it matters to most fans. That's why we're doing this. We're doing this very light touch scheme that provides a final safeguard for fans to make sure that they're no longer treated like an afterthought or a nuisance, which is what we found when we were in trouble at Wigan Athletic, and that they're put right back at the centre of things again.
Yeah. The other thing I find I have to do, and I'm happy to do this in public now, is that both Kieran and I get accused of being party political in this. It's no secret that I've never voted Tory in my life, and I can't imagine any circumstances in which I would. But having said that, this is nothing to do with party politics, because one of the reasons I'm so keen to see this happen is to reflect on the brilliant work that Tracy Crouch did and many other people in the Tory party in getting this running. So we spoke to Tracy Crouch on many occasions. Kieran has a very good relationship with her. I think she's a remarkable woman and a remarkable parliamentarian. And I'm really keen for her efforts in this to be rewarded with an independent regulator being appointed.
No, I really agree with that. And I have a huge amount of time for Tracy, who's been very supportive of helping us to continue that work and continue that legacy. I wish people could see more of this in politics because, for all of the showboating and the party political point scoring, quite often what happens is we have very, very similar experiences. I'm not the only MP to go through the experience of watching what happened to my town and my club. And we care about the same things and we work together to make things happen. And you're right to say it's not a party political issue, because this started life under the Conservative government. It was in both of our manifestos, and right across Parliament there is a very wide spectrum of support for it. We're determined to get it right. We are listening. We've got a few weeks to go in the Lords and then the Commons. And if there are changes that we need to make, we can make them. But what is not up for negotiation is taking action to protect our fans and to protect our clubs. Watching what happened at Bury, watching what happened at Wigan, talking to Reading, Morecambe, a whole host of clubs who came forward to help us when we were in trouble. I don't want fans to ever be in that situation again. I don't think Tracy does either. And that's why we're determined to work cross-party, across the country to make this happen.
And finally, Lisa, can you give us a rough estimate of when you think a regulator may be in post?
Well, we've already got, we're calling it a shadow regulator, but it's basically a team that sits here in my department in culture, media and sport that is set up and setting things up so that when the regulator is established, they're ready to go. We've gone out to ask for applicants for the chair. And we are well underway in terms of making that appointment. That person will then have to go in front of the Commons Select Committee to see a cross-party group of MPs to make sure that they're happy. And then they should be able to appoint a chief executive and get up and running. Obviously, all of this is dependent on when we pass the legislation. We're expecting this to be out of the Lords in the next few weeks and into the Commons. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think there's a lot of support for this bill right across the House of Commons. I think fans will get a voice right at the centre of power. And then we'll do something even more important than give them a voice in Westminster. We'll give them a voice in their clubs again.
Brilliant. I have encouraged Kieran to apply for the job, but he's from Sussex. He can't live on 130 grand a year. Lisa, thank you so much for talking to us today. We really appreciate that.
Hit pause on whatever you're listening to and hit play on your next adventure. Stay 2 nights and get a $50 Best Western gift card. Life's a trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Visit bestwestern.com for complete terms and conditions.
It's time to rewrite the vacation rules. With Royal Caribbean, your family can look forward to just about anything. Break the thrill barrier, roaring down the tallest water slide in North America. Jump into breathtaking jungles and jaw-dropping coves. Vibe off the charts on our private island Perfect Day at Coco Cay. And end the day knowing things are just getting started. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
I think Tracy Crouch has probably found a soulmate there, Kieran. Lisa's really very committed to the bill and gave short shrift to some of the opposition put to her by Paul and Claire in a perfectly lovely way, of course.
Yes, I think it was fair and measured. I welcome the fact that she said they're looking for light touch. In an ideal world, the regulator will end up doing an awful lot of time playing Wordle and twiddling thumbs because, as Lisa herself had said, if the Premier League and the EFL had managed to get into a room, had managed to come up with a different deal, and I know the Premier League is saying, well, there is a deal already in place, so why do we have to go and change it? Well, I think the broad perception is that the deal in its current form isn't quite working, and nobody is saying that the Premier League clubs should have to give up vast swathes of their revenue. I think the desire of the EFL to have 25% is more than ambitious. You know, it's not justified in terms of viewing figures or anything like that. But a wee bit more money, and then from what I understand, talking to people in the industry at championship level, is that they'll be more than happy. And there were fewer things to worry about. But they've not managed to do that, and they're paid a lot of money to not do that. And there's an element of self-interest, as I always talk about. So yeah, I was very impressed. As you know, I'm completely non-partisan on a party political basis, but it was actually quite reassuring to hear Lisa speak so highly of Tracy Crouch. And one of the things that I've learned from sort of becoming slightly more elevated in my position is that all of the MPs that I've spoken to as our elected representatives have conducted themselves in a very reasonable and fair manner. And as Lisa said, the showboating is for show, but they do appear to be able to get on and make progress, and that is a welcome sight.
Well, interesting as well, Kieran, that Lisa is a proud native of Wigan, and so she has lived experience of what turmoil at a football club can do to the local community and to fans of that club. In a way, I would suggest that Kemi Badenoch probably doesn't.
And we've also been through it. And
yeah.
And for anybody that hasn't, it says, "Oh, it's only a football club." It's not. It is genuinely horrible. It's the fourth emergency service. It's an part of your extended family, however you want to describe it. But your football club is part of your identity and history and heritage, and that is worth preserving. And I hope that this legislation goes some way. You can't turn the dial down to zero, but it can be equivalent of having a burglar alarm, in that an inappropriate person will say, "Well, I've got things to do. I'll go to the house which doesn't have a burglar alarm, or I'll go and do something else. But I'm not going to try to take on the football industry as a means of manipulating finances, a means of opportunities for money laundering, a means of making a quick buck and letting people on an individual basis suffer."
Kieran, how many times have I got to tell you, comedy is the fourth emergency service? If you're having trouble getting through to the ambulance, police or fire brigade, give a stand-up comedian a call. It'll take your mind off it while you're waiting. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and much, much more. And you can do that by going to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. One important thing to be aware of, if you're one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers, your membership will not transfer over automatically if you sign up to the new club. You will need to cancel your Patreon subscription and set up a new one using the link on the website. We'll turn off that Patreon offering at the end of this month, which I think we're still in February. It's hard to keep track, you know. I'm looking forward to. I've got so many bits of paper in front of me. I didn't know what I was doing in that Lisa Nandy interview. I was going, that's not right. That was last week's. I wrote down loads of notes about the bill, which I didn't get to use. And if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. You can follow us on X, Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube. Don't forget, and if you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on our website. I believe, Kieran, the T-shirt is back in stock. Priceoffootball.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.